Thank you all for being here. We are delighted to have you join us for this celebration. My name is Lucinda Holt. I am the Writer Studio Executive Director, and we will be celebrating, as I mentioned, the 2025 Pushcart Prize. In 1976, Bill Henderson and a group of founding editors that included Paul Bowles, Ralph Ellison, Joyce Carol Oates, and Reynolds Price started the Pushcart Prize anthology to recognize and celebrate the best work in a rapidly expanding independent publishing movement. We will hear from Bill Henderson shortly, but I wanted to read a few lines from his introduction to the 2025 Pushcart anthology. Quote, "What is gratifying to me this year are the many fictions and poems that celebrate simple acts of love and wonder. With so much horror surrounding us, you know the list, I am honored by the vision of these writers," end quote. Yes, in this 49th annual edition of the most celebrated literary series in America, there are brilliant stories, poems, and essays from dozens of small presses. This afternoon, we'll hear some of that prize-winning work and other original work from Gregory Pardlow and Chinnis, Nishanth Injam, Danica Kelly, Andre Dubus, and Diane Seuss. Bill Henderson calls small presses our refuge. I hope today hearing this work will be a refuge, a bit of a respite from all that ails our world. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Writer Studio founder and director Philip Schultz. Philip Schultz founded the Writer Studio in 1987 after spending 4 years as the director of New York University's graduate creative writing program, which he also founded. Schultz has taught undergraduate and graduate fiction, poetry, literature, and craft classes at a variety of universities, including Tufts, NYU, the University of Massachusetts at Boston, and Columbia University. He won the 2008 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry for Failure. His most recent collection, Luxury, includes The Women's March, which was included in Best American Poetry and was preceded by The Wherewithal, a novel in verse. He is also the author of 2 memoirs, My Dyslexia and Comforts of the Abyss, The Art of Persona Writing. He's written 6 other poetry collections and been honored with the Academy of American Poets Lamont Prize, an American Academy and Institute of Arts and Letters Award, and a National Book Award nomination. His work has been published in The New Yorker, Poetry, The New Republic, 5 Points, The Gettysburg Review, The Paris Review, and Slate, among other magazines. He's also the recipient of a 2005 Guggenheim Fellowship in Poetry. And he's also received poetry fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the New York Foundation for the Arts, a Fulbright Scholarship, as well as the Levinson Prize for Poetry from Poetry Magazine. Please welcome Philip Schultz. Philip.
Hi. Very few of those prizes are real. It's all one huge fantasy. But what is real is my introducing Bill Henderson, and what an honor that is. Yes, this is the 49th edition of this magnificent contribution to American letters, which means that next year it's going to be a half a century old. And I remember Bill mentioning this idea that he had when I first came to New York. We were in a bar and he was telling me about it and how impressive, how extraordinary it sounded. Let me say that Bill has written, is also the author of 8 memoirs. And the recognition that the Pushcart Prize has gotten is the Sandroff Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Book Critics Circle, the 2006 Poets and Writers Barnes and Noble's Writers for Writers Award, and of course, the 2020 citation for distinguished service to the arts from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. That's just to name a few. But what I would like to mention to our two particular contributions, and first of all, this wonderful book, this wonderful anthology recognizes small presses, small magazines, journals, and we all know how much they struggle to survive in many cases, and how so much important, significant, serious work is published in them. And he, more than anyone else, calls attention to the great achievement, to the great gift that they've given us. I also want to call attention to what I feel is as great a contribution to American and international letters is this community that he has created through this anthology, a community of writers. We're all going, as we know, through a very dark time. And what we do is all the more important. And the sense of fellowship that he gives us, that allows us to do this, is such an incredible gift. So it is my honor to introduce Bill Henderson.
Thank you, brother. Phil lives a couple of blocks away, so we're just talking down the road. But that's very moving. And I keep telling you, it's not me, it's everybody else. It's you and hundreds of other writers and the almost 800 presses around the world that make nominations every year. The 150 contributing editors who are on the staff contributing, unpaid except with books. And the 6 guest editors that come on and change every year. And the readers who still care about all this. That's the important thing. If we didn't have readers who care about good writing, careful, thoughtful writing, we wouldn't be anywhere. And as Phil mentioned, we're in bad shape now. We have lies that are purported to be truth and big money in charge, and big money has never liked good writing. And I want to thank the people who joined us tonight, almost 300 people who have tuned in to listen to our wonderful writers who are going to read, and they're all in the current Pushcart Prize. So let me read very briefly from my introduction to this edition, and then I'll get off the stage, because I always think I'm just a secretary here, and I really am. Here's the introduction to the current PP 49. A beautiful, beautiful volume, by the way, thanks to everybody else except me. Long ago and far away, 1976, Yonkers, New York, the first Pushcart Prize was published in an era not unlike our own. Writers were trapped in a limbo. The commercial publishers controlled what reached the readers. If your writing did not promise profit, it didn't exist. Today, we are caught in a different limbo of lies, gossip, and hate. Whatever makes a profit or renown reaches readers. Authors of serious intent are drowned out in the racket. The trendy is in, the authentic is out. Small presses are a refuge. In the 49 years of the Pushcart Prize, we have featured so much that is so good-hearted, so honest, so unafraid, and this year is no exception. So that's my introduction. That's all I want to say. It's all you people out there, all you readers, all you writers. It's not me. Thank you. And now back to Lucinda.
Thank you so much, Bill. We so appreciate what you do, even though you deny that you do anything. We appreciate everything that you've done. So now we will hear from some of the Pushcart Prize winning authors. So it's my great pleasure to introduce the first reader. Gregory Pardlow is the author of Spectral Evidence, which was a finalist for the Kingsley Tufts Prize and longlisted for the National Book Award, and digest winner of the 2015 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. His other books include Totem and Air Traffic, a memoir and essays. His honors include fellowships from the New York Public Library's Cullman Center, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Guggenheim Foundation. He divides his time between New York and the United Arab Emirates, where he is head of literature and creative writing at NYU, Abu Dhabi. Please welcome Gregory Pardlow.
Thanks, everybody. It's great to see you all. Thanks, Francesca and Phil, for hosting, and thanks, Bill, for the great legacy you've created here. I'm a little worried. I'm coming back home to Minnesota on Tuesday. I haven't seen snow in quite a while, so I'm a little anxious about the long trip. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning for me here, so forgive me if I'm a little groggy. Theater selfie. At Richard Rodgers Theater, I shrank my face to the box office window and confessed to the Lucite's voice vent that I'd told my wife a lie. I had hidden no Christmas gifts in the basement, nor yet acquired tickets to Hamilton for my youngest, as I'd boasted I would. Oblivious to cost, I was a hostage to the season and my ego, forced to drain the ATM for my deliverance. The ticket guy pshawed and, like a chilly neighbor, acknowledged me enough to punctuate his snub. But the seat map online, I pleaded, showed several vacant dots in March. No seats, he snapped, and we went on like this until I looked it up on my phone. Those, he snarled, you can't. His pause, its meaning irretrievable now, was heavy with the ghosts of Broadway's sins. It was as if a voice off stage was force-feeding him the line, you can't afford those. His cheeks ripened to prove he'd heard it just as I'd heard it, but that this time, maybe, he'd heard it in the way that I'd heard it. Face frozen, his eyes went floodlight, making me suddenly real. The veil had fallen between us, and we too stood outside the magic. We were our only audience. As one trained in this hackneyed improv, I knew that I might dress the specter of his fear in comedy to save him. I needed to draw him out of his head. You got kids? I asked. He nodded, but I needed to hear the emotion in his voice. What are you gonna do, huh? I laughed. It's like, what do you want from me? Am I right? And he mirrored me, shaking his head. The things we do. He asked if I could bring my kid next Tuesday. Hells yeah, I said, careful to stay in character, though I wasn't sure where he was taking us. He bent to root beneath his desk. Then the Lucite spit 2 miracles he must have set aside for someone else. The selfie we took that day tells a partial story. You see us, all teeth and safe as bros. You see me, holding the tickets like a peace sign. But you could never guess the price we paid to get them. So I'm gonna read, thank you. I'm gonna read a couple of new poems, actually, for the remainder of my time. I've been working on these things I call charms, and I use them to address otherwise intractable social ills, of which we have plenty these days. And so I hope to get a lot of mileage out of these things. I'll start with a kind of background on the charm. This is called An Apology for the Use of Charms. Afro-pessimism is not a euphemism for a bad hair day. No joke, it's rough out here. You try to stay upbeat when a beat cop cracks a skull and the court condemns the kid who filmed him. The reggae soundtrack to the first-person shooter's gallery of body cam footage asks, what you gonna do when they come for you? Like it was ordained, which, some say, it was. See, When Noah's son Ham stumbled upon the old man, buck-ass naked, passed out, drunk as a judge, rather than process the shame that his kid had witnessed, the Old Testament bad dad cursed all of Ham's descendants. Some say that's why we're in the fix we're in. For if you believe it, Ham begat black folks. His reckless, let's call it eyeballing, begat the curse of everlasting servitude. Back before colonial laws forbade black women from naming in court the white men who'd knocked them up, long before calipers sized a skull in the long con of racial science, pious slave merchants brandished Bibles and claimed Ham's curse gave them divine license to ply their trade. Don't try to make it make sense. Things are better now, some deduce from theories of human progress in which fish with feet rise to hunch as monkeys aspiring toward the angelic train and stand upright as God-fearing men. Also then, stop living in the past. Meanwhile, Jim Crow's cheap cologne still haunts the halls of state capitol buildings. Must we pretend nobody knows why we sing the blues? Why we whistle through the blessing in our two front teeth? Why we might turn to the black girl magic of charms that traces back to the two-headed woman dancing between pillars of fire and cloud? Not the trinket on your bracelet or Crocs, but the spells, bits of mojo to drum up strength to live another day free from having slapped someone. Ask Miss Johnson down the street. She'll tell you, a smile big as a watermelon slice is the essence of enchantment. Be generous with it. Repeat, as DeRay tweets, I love my blackness and yours. And we'll all meet up at the family picnic because, in truth, we are every American Ham's children learning to self-parent in a nation forefathered by deadbeats who would have us believe that all will be well as long as we pretend we don't see what we're seeing. And last, thank you. One more. This is a charm for darkness. Directions. Use your 5-finger discount from a corner store to obtain a pack of now-laters. Freeze dry them and combine with the pestle ground shell of a blister beetle. Apply the neon green concoction as eyeshadow and wear for 4 hours, dancing nonstop in the strobe light beside the DJ booth on Grown and Sexy Night. Act as if you are enchanted by the advances Wilhelm Kuhn made in science, while you imagine him explaining how he believed the merest blink of an eye could arrest time, just as the photographer Eddie Muybridge proved a horse can fly by chopping one into millisecond freeze frames. With Kuhn, it was always rabbit season. He made his lab a factory and fitted the little furballs with hostage hoods to charge their eyes with the enzyme rhodopsin so that the light he would later bathe them in might, like trauma, chemically remain. One by one, he yanked the rabbits from their cages like Kleenex. One by one, Kuhn removed the hoods and face-baked 100 bunnies. Or so. Why would he count bunnies abundant as HeLa cells are today? Kuhn clamped their heads in his vise and pinned their lids open to imprint waffle grids of sunbeam from his window pane. We might say he gave them to the light, which is an idiom for giving birth. But to keep the first brightness fresh as snowfall, one by one, he lopped the bunnies' heads with a mortal shutter click. Then he peeled their corneas like old-school Polaroids. Wilhelm Kuhn, your lab results prove you are the father of optography. You found the light of yon window burnt like Jesus in the toast onto 1 in 1,000 eyeballs. Who was counting? Your science proved what's possible depends on what you're willing to sacrifice. This charm channels the soft power of all those rabbit's foot amulets squandered in Kuhn's hunt for death's peephole. aka the sublime. This charm will recharge as you meditate on the ritual nature of sacrifice, how it situates suffering as a renewable resource. Meditate on its multifarious forms, from enslaved women unnamed by history and forced by the speculum of J. Marion Sims, the father of gynecology, to give light to their suffering in the name of science, to other oblivions from which, with practice, you may also draw fire, e.g., Tuskegee, the plundered corpses of unrecorded Negro cemeteries, forced sterilizations. Yet, as pain is no one's birthright, this charm will lift you in weightless ecstasy and crowd surf you, like as in a Marian procession, across a sea of bodies, grooving, relentless masses stirring with the epigenetic dreams their ancestors stitched into their methylated genomes. A little bit of science there. So, it is my very good pleasure right now to introduce Ann Chinnis. Ann Chinnis is the author of 2 poetry chapbooks, Poppet, My Poppet, released by Finishing Line Press in March 2024, and I Can Catch Anything, to be released in April 25. She is the recipient of a Pushcart Prize. Her work has been published in Sky Island Journal, Nostos, Atlanta Review, Gyroscope, and Crab Creek Review, among others, and studies at the Writer's Studio with Philip Schultz. She's an emergency physician and a leadership coach. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Gregory. Wow, those were phenomenal. I love the charms and suffering as a renewable resource. So also thank you, Bill, for your celebration of the small presses, and my deep gratitude to Phil and the Writer's Studio for inspiration, challenge, and the gift of a community that means the world to me. And Francesca, thanks for your wizardry in setting this up. How to be a cowgirl. First, don't call yourself cowgirl. Shove your sockless feet in the red leather boots from last summer. Ignore your brother's laughter. Then go find a pony. Snake through a break in a fence. Dare the brambles to stop you. Sing towards the pasture like you are a siren, and you're Ulysses, any friendly pony. Cinch the strap tighter on your straw hat for liftoff. Grab a handful of mane and fling yourself onto destiny's haunches. Bow your head to the field before you, the fescue, big blue stem, dogtooth violet, grander than any garden in town. Read your fortune in the galena that glitters through the Missouri red clay. Let the Queen Anne's lace reveal your true fate. Its clusters of hundreds whisper the words to a poem about your future as a pilot or a doctor or a forest ranger. Let your holster and cap gun be your courage, tested at sunset, in thunderstorms by the bark of a stray. Lay your face on the neck of your pony and smell how her sweat is sweeter than peppermint in your Christmas stocking. Notice how the clomp of her hooves on limestone has more purpose than most people you know. To cross a meadow like this is to ride with unbridled ambition, like a hive of bees. Back home on the porch, you would stare at the train tracks, counting the minutes till the 10 p.m. from St. Louis rattles your glass with its whistle. Before you, watch the sycamore peeling bark that's too tight for its stretch. Above you, be humbled by the sapphire sky with no limits. Below you, relax into the sway of the pony. Believe that your pony knows where, one day, you'll be going. So, a newer poem, Love Song, Port and Starboard, for my wife. Docking our boat, I boast, I've got this, while from the dock you laugh and say, it's hard, alone, to snug a boat for every wind and tide. If I slacken port line to a droop, the starboard strains against its mooring. When I secure the bow, it leaves the stern cords warring. I cannot tether rope to cleat without a fray, a chafe, a sudden jerk that renders our boat squirming in its berth like dead leaves hedged in tidal eddies. I pretend I am the captain. I bought the nylon line myself. I tied the knots myself. I coiled the extra rope into a pleasing spiral. I danced a drunken sailor's jig when I made fast our boat, high on my own drug, self-reliance. Our boat held tight. When northeast breeze shifted, boat slammed dock and piling. Through high tide and low tide and flood tide and rip tide, I tied and untied and retied my knots, a tug of war. 2 sets of hands required to even up the play, but I wouldn't have it. This is misery, but it was I who chalked the stays, who hitched the cleat. I was the one who dangled fenders, and I will keep tying and untying this boat until it sinks me. I can cinch the knots around the piling, but you're right. I can't double hitch a stubborn ship to my left wrist. I need a second left hand to snug that throw. More, I need a rock, a dock, a knot, a cleat, a mooring. I need you, my love, my wife. And lastly, nothing fancy for Aaron. Like a dragonfly, may you find beauty in your journey. Aaron, after a 6-pack. 1. Don't make it this fancy. And you tossed him your phone. The first picture you found after your biopsy. Dragonfly wings, veined in jade. A woman's face carved in green chalcedony. Asleep as her bust fights its way out of the mouth of a griffin. And Vinny, the strip mall tattoo artist who owns the ABC store next door, not a patch of flesh on his hands uninked, opined over the Pearl Jam playing. Yeah, that's a Lalique. Pretty classy. You just wanted Dragonfly, right? You held tight your lighted cigarette and a warm Corona with lime while you climbed on the table. And when the ink gun buzzed your calf, you said, wait, make it say, let the journey begin. 2. It's night shift of a home football game, and the ER waiting room is standing room only. ER manager, you plant yourself at the sliding doors in your navy heels, your hose with a run up the back of each leg. You boom, welcome, as you hand condoms to students, cups of water to toddlers. I sprint past you on my way to suture a face and grumble, do you have to be so hospitable? At 6 a.m., you are rubbing your bunions, and I ask if you still want to be a Walmart greeter one day. Making people happy is what I do best. Your shift over, you step out the ambulance doors into the darkness. 3. We're hiking along a stream under a white umbrella of hemlock. Your scalp incision healed and your radiation burns faded when your doctors say you have 6 months. And you were talking strategy, how to make the patients happy. And like a doctor, I'm saying, and counting your minutes. You go quiet, and I turn to watch you. Plaid shorts, a puffy red parka, 1 blue Keds in each hand, sloshing barefoot across the cold river rocks. You pause on a flat stone to consider the outline. Pine green wings inked on your calf. 2 slate antennae sensing the pulse of your muscle, and you laugh with the abandon of a great blue heron lifting in flight. Chinnis, let's shut up and smell the hemlock. 4. Beloved friend, your beauty lies in seeing grace within us, and in loaning me your rose-colored glasses so I can see too. And you have never asked me to return the pair I squint through daily, after 30 years, still awed by the view. You would say this more simply than I can with some pithy quote from the bathroom wall of a Pittsburgh diner where you are in true love with the pepperoni rolls, moaning, mmm, with each mouthful, saying, life is good, don't forget it. I steal one more glance under the table at your new wings breathing across your calf, the ink alive in the fluorescent lights of the diner. I have the great honor and pleasure of introducing Nishant Ingjam, who received an MFA from the Helen Zell Writers Program at the University of Michigan. He is the recipient of a Penn Robert J. Dow Short Story Prize and a Cecilia Joyce Johnson Emerging Writer Award from the Key West Literary Seminar. His work has appeared or is forthcoming in the Atlantic, Zoetrope All Story, the Virginia Quarterly Review, Ziziva, the Georgia Review, which won the 2022 ASME Award for Fiction for its publication of his story, Scroll India, Best Debut Short Stories 2021, and the Best American Magazine Writing 2022. Raised in Telangana, India, he now lives in Chicago.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Anne, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to the Writers Studio and Bill and Francesca and everyone who made this happen. I'm extraordinarily sort of grateful and humbled to be reading with such amazing writers. Today, I'm going to be reading from a short story. The short story is called The Math of Living. The short story, there's not a whole lot you need to know. I'll be reading almost all of it. One thing to note is that in the story I will be, I'll take on a robotic voice at times. So I'll say A or B or C or D. So those are abstract things, like you can imagine them to be like just as in like an alphabet with brackets around it. That's how actually I have it in the story. All right, let me start. I've been working for the Chicago Tribune for about 4 years when it strikes me that I'll go home again in 3 months. The ticket has been booked and I'm ready. My boss has reviewed the JavaScript code and made his updates for the day. The code is in production. Everything about my going home is formulaic. Plug in different numbers and I'm home already. Sometimes I think this is my legacy. Not everyone can write themselves a home. I tell myself it's the next best thing to being on a plane. By the time this plane lands, I will have traveled for 26 hours. This is not new to me. The distance between the place I live and the place that lives in me is more than 8,000 miles. Every hour of the journey home, I'll look at my watch, even though the screen in front of me has a world clock. This is so I'm not fooled by time zone changes. Every minute of the journey, I'll have the consciousness of going home. I'll try to forget it, to lose myself in a good book. But there's no such thing as a good book when you're going home after X months. I can't but sense where the plane is heading. The plane will land and people will rise. There'll be an extraordinary wait to get off the plane. Men and women will argue about their place in the queue after retrieving bags stowed elsewhere. Then it'll be over. I'll get through customs and exit the terminal. This is the moment I've been waiting for. My parents will be at the airport, waving at me from a sea of onlookers. They will be as excited as children. My father will do A or B. My mother will do B or C or D. It's not surprising that my parents will shower me with love. I know they can't help it. They haven't seen me for a long time. They'll offer to take my bag and ask E questions about my well-being. I'll feel the weather reading my skin. At this point, I haven't gotten to the cab yet, but I don't have to reach the house to know the conclusion of this journey. I've already walked through the door. I've walked through it in that moment outside the terminal. Home is the recognition of the lives we led together once, the things that only we knew of. It's the sound of the river that runs in our veins, or rather the shape of a story we tell ourselves. Who doesn't love a good river? In the cab, my father will ask me either F or G before proceeding to tell me everything that has changed in the city since I last visited. My mother will ask H questions about the food I would like to eat. I will enjoy this attention, this care that was missing when I was a child. It's inevitable that J minutes later, my parents will start quarreling. That's just who they are. They can't help it. I'll start feeling anxious. I'll never be as happy as I am in the moment I arrive. The magic will be over. All that's left, mundanity. I'll briefly feel like rescheduling the return flight I have in K days and going back to work. But I can't do that to my parents. Their faces are still glowing, and I wonder if love is a candle lit by distance. The cab will stop at the toll gate that keeps increasing its prices. My father will take out his purse, but he doesn't have L rupees. I'll have to pay for the toll. He will not look at me, the humiliation in his face transforming into anger. My mother will glare at him, the shine entirely gone. This is not new. I know there's no money. I must continue to work in a country that'll never be mine for them to have something to eat. Poverty isn't anyone's choice. Some lives are meant to be. There's a Hindi idiom for this I cannot remember. If language is a city, mine is crumbling block by block. The flight attendant asked me if I want M or O. They're no longer carrying N, and I refused both before I realized what I'm doing. I don't call her back. I'm sick of airline food. And then, of course, I cannot escape the guilt. I'm exercising a luxury I hadn't known before. I take consolation in the fact that I'll enjoy sumptuous food at home. Everything will cost P times less. I'll have Q rupees to splurge at restaurants. Better to go in the first few days before the restaurant money also goes toward loan payment and household expenses. That is if the medical bills don't take away more than R rupees. Everything is a calculation. My father has often said to me, why are you spending S dollars on a plane ticket? Why are you coming home almost every year? As if I did not factor this cost into the math of living. I remember telling him once that capitalism has figured this shit out, that having a day off makes a work productive in the long run. Just don't kill me over a flight ticket, I might have said. But you can never please the math teacher and a father, the one who taught you to solve for X first before you do anything else. The things you say don't add up. There's no mathematical value to feeling adrift in a white country. Seatbelt warning, turbulence. There are T babies on the plane and they're all crying. I put on the headphones and pick a movie. One of the teenage lovers has cancer and has months to live. I'm not interested. I ogle at the house depicted in the movie. What I would like is a spectacular home in which to die. I cannot stop working. I cannot abandon my people. My mother has severe bronchitis from years of exposure to heavily polluted air. I would like to bring her to the country that has me by the collar. I would like to say to my mother, you gave me breath, and now I want to help you breathe. None of that is possible without money and time and work and exile. And what has exile done? It has taken everything I had in return for the idea of a home far, far away. Home is the sound of a river you're better off keeping at a distance. What else can you do except listen? There's a voice in the cabin telling me I'm wee hours away. I know how this goes. Each flight is more or less the same. This is the part where I wonder if my father was right, if I should have stayed in America. Guilt is what I have left after a lifetime of not acting on my desires. A rupee spent on a toffee is a rupee wasted. The ice cream that everyone is having is probably not good for me. Nothing is always the correct response to what do you want. In the cab, my parents will argue incessantly about the necessity of taking a cab. I cannot stand it. I will begin to wish that I'd saved the money and not flown home. We'll make do with W, I'll assure them. My mother will cough from the dust creeping through the windows, and I'll tell her I brought her American medicine, Tylenol, and she'll smile. Anything foreign is good, and everything home is sickness. Haven't I been reading the news? My father will ask me how I like America now that I've lived there for Y years. I will lie and tell him that I like being in a place of great freedom and opportunity. It's better to let him think of America as my future home, to let him float past all inconvenient truths. There's no reason to tell him that I will never have enough alphabet to build a room for myself. The cab will stop at Z traffic lights and I'll see change. The city that was once mine is no longer what it was. Every street is altered. I'll feel foreign to the city. If my parents do not come to the airport, if they're not alive, I will not know where I am. I might be in the same city, but I will no longer be home. I don't know what I'll be if I do not have a home to go to. I don't know what I'll do if I cannot see my experiences reflected in the eyes of someone I love. Home is where rivers die, letter by letter. I've been working for the Chicago Tribune for about 5 years when it strikes me that I'll go home in 2 months. The ticket has been booked and I'm ready. The phone rings. My mother's lungs have collapsed. She's dead. The funeral is in 2 days. My boss reviews the JavaScript code and makes his updates for the day. The code is in production. Thank you. It's with great pleasure I introduce Danica Kelly. Danica Kelly is the author of Renunciations, winner of the Anisfield Wolf Book Award in Poetry, and Bestiary, the winner of 2015 Cave Canem Poetry Prize, a Hurston Wright Legacy Award, and a Kate Tufts Discovery Award. Danica is a recipient of a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts and is a Cave Canem Graduate Fellow. Her poems have been published in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The Paris Review, and elsewhere. She's an associate professor in the English department at the University of Iowa, where she teaches creative writing.
Thank you. Thank you. My internet has been acting a little wonky. I'm hoping that it'll just hold up and we won't have a problem. I just want to say thank you, as everyone else has said, to Phil, Francesca, Lucinda, and the Writers Studio for hosting this reading. Immense gratitude to Bill. And it's just such a treat to get to read alongside these brilliant writers. So I'm just going to read, I think, 4 poems. We'll still see how that goes. And I'm going to start with Self-Portrait with Friend, which is in the anthology. Self-Portrait with Friend. Gasworks Park 2022 for Vung. What to make of the man, crouched beneath the nylon wing, the wind strong enough to fill the cherub's cheek, too weak to send the man across the lake. I haven't seen you in years, though, how to count the time indoors contracted, each day elastic but scuttled with panic, like the man, his squared jaw, his chalk teeth, who tucks his knees, soles nearly grazing the couple necking in the grass. Where are the geese, you wonder? And when we finally wander down the asphalt path laid into the hill, there they are, I say, pointing to the water's edge. The flock arranged as if pieces in a game, as if each to a square. The adults crisp in rest, the juveniles obscure, blurry, trundling ashore. The sky obscure, blurry, blue behind a net of clouds scudding the sun. I'm trying to remember when I saw you last, but my memory flutters as if under a false wing, batted and buffeted. I'm trying to master with my strings, my hard and soft plastics, the air. I give up. There is before and there is now. We are walking side by side, always, it seems, uphill. And so based on that poem, I have my friends really like to go on walks. They like to get their steps in. I'm often with them. I don't care as much about my steps, but it's a way to spend time. So I have some walking with friends poems. This one is called Landscape with Tall Grasses. Jen says it hasn't rained in 8 weeks, and suddenly this dust makes sense. There should be Doll's Eye, Virginia Creeper, more Wild Ginger, and Creeping Charlie. Still, what's native persists. Roots arcing out, grasp the dirt. Roots like a hand holding on. Roots we cannot see, but for the evidence of this grass standing. 2 kinds of rye, sedges, blue stem, everything brown now, waiting for relief. Relief will not arrive this season or the next, for both are the seasons of ending, of the lengthening night. And so surrender. Seed heads, dried to rattle, blade and branch sturdy enough for what feeds. Well, nothing can bloom all year, but there, if you attend, spring in the green light of summer, thrum in the blistered sedge. I've been working on hope. It's a slow process. It's unfamiliar. Okay, so this poem is titled, My Friend Asks If I Think My Mama Would Ever Apologize. When I finish laughing, a round sound, a flooded river sound, I sigh. A wind sound, desert sound, wood turned to mineral sound, petrified jewel sound, crystal. My answer clear, but the feeling, a waving of hands, palms up, eyes squinting, the palm, either palm, my palm, pressed to my face, to my mouth, my forehead, both palms now, to my hot cheeks, when I remember. We turn away when a boy runs towards the goslings, the geese, his father far behind, silent. We turn because we know what the wings could do, though they don't. Not now. I would go back in time, I say, follow my parents before they become my parents to the roof where they made me, show them a child who runs toward the wings, show them a child who does not believe in silence. But I can't. Not now. I say, there is no present worth my past. We both want it to be untrue, but it is as true as goose shit in the grass. And there's no time machine either. I'm with you, friend. And beyond, there's the future, the rest of our walk, the lights. And this last poem is in my forthcoming collection. It comes out this year. It's called The Natural Order of Things. And there are a number of poems in this collection that are titled The Bone Museum. So this is one of the Bone Museums. The Bone Museum. Is this the beginning or the end? An island tossed ashore, a man mustached and hovering in the angel position, suspended, his eye not on the screen, on its proximate noise. The man asks, is this the beginning or the end? And my beloved friend says, nothing. And I say both, or perhaps the middle. We're in the Hall of Bones, this cathedral, like all cathedrals, a mausoleum, a place of burning and small solace to the burned and bones beneath. Here, the reliquary of wax, and thus the metaphor of the hand as rib, as pelvis, as kidney. Here, the windowed splash of Venus born, water bagged like produce. And thus the angel behind us, resigned. I am at the end, I am at the end, he whispers, sinking as he is in our gravity. Reliquary of wax, yes, and bronze, and who have we walked over to be here? Who among my siblings cares for the hall, for the bones? Who among my parents' siblings would see the metaphor of the hand, the shape an attendant makes, leaning into or out of the light cast over the small bronzes, two dancers? My beloved friend eyes the attitude of the man in the light, then his shadow as a shape worth noting. Worth noting, too, the canvas taut and the yellow knot, the small failures of knowledge housed only in words, and thus remember in the Hall of Bones the rope and what the rope knows, its numbers, its way of tying one thing sometimes to another, or tying one thing sometimes to itself, and thus the shadow the knot makes on the canvas, on the cathedral's floor, on the floor above the bones. Is this the beginning or the end? I rub my mustache, I adjust my cap. The island in the sea, the island on the shore, the island in the sea, the island on the shore, the island on a small platform in the hall, a metaphor for itself. I am the end, I am the end. Angel position and the reliquary of a question asked too late. Angel position, and the bones will sing if you tighten the rope, loosen it. Thank you. I have the very distinct pleasure of introducing Andre Dubus III, whose books include the New York Times bestsellers House of Sand and Fog, The Garden of Last Days, and his memoir, Townie. His recent works include the novel Such Kindness and a collection of personal essays, Ghost Dogs on Killers and Kin. He is also the editor of Reaching Inside, 50 acclaimed authors on 100 unforgettable short stories. Mr. Dubus has been a finalist for the National Book Award and has been awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship, the National Magazine Award for Fiction, 3 Pushcart Prizes, and is a recipient of an American Academy of Arts and Letters Award in Literature. His books are published in over 25 languages, and he teaches at the University of Massachusetts Lowell.
Thank you, Donica. Boy, I love that reading. Who have we walked over to be here? Wow. And thank you, Lucinda and Francesca, for your magic. Bill Henderson, for your essential volume reaching its 50th year. We need it more than we ever have. And Phil Schultz, for your wonderful writer's room doing the celebration tonight. I'm going to read the first 7.5 minutes from this new story that's in the collection. It's on page 54. It's called Gary's Way. After you betray him, you will try to explain yourself. You will sit at his computer, the one he fell into and never returned, and you will stare at the screen inches from your face, but your fingertips will hover above the very keyboard he could never leave, and you will feel like the woman who drives her friend to an AA meeting and then goes drinking for days. No, you will not write to him on this machine. You will not. You'll pull a sheet of paper from the printer. It's where he made so very many copies of his diatribes, the ones he mailed to senators and state representatives, to mayors and town managers, to city commissioners and selectmen and members of local and faraway school committees. You will hold a ballpoint pen, the logo of his company etched into its shaft, Bosco Precision Ink. That's what drew you to him in the first place. Then, unlike those fallen boys from before, Gary knew who he was and had steady work he'd been doing since he was 21 years old. 5 mornings a week for 25 years now, he has walked into a large lighted room filled with machines that make other machines, and he knows how to run them as well as he knows how to run you. That's what you will think as you write, Dear Gary. You will stare at those 2 words for a moment or two. You will try to think about the word dear. But the regional office of the FBI is only miles away, and maybe they will bring him here before they take him elsewhere, and so you will feel the need to hurry. But this is what he has done to you for years. Left you feeling monitored and anxious as you fry a steak on the stove, as you open the electric bill and write on the envelope the date its payment is due, even as you wipe yourself after peeing, his eyes on your hand and face as he pauses with his razor at the mirror, a razor that he will replace after using it only once. For this is Gary's way. Everything must be done with great precision and care, and with the sharpest and most efficient tools possible. And so, as you sit there at Gary's computer desk in the summer camp you have tried to make a home 4 seasons of the year for 17 years, the keyboard pushed aside so that you can write him your, what, confession? The word patriot will come to you. Dear Gary, maybe I don't know a lot. Is that true? Do you not know a lot? Or are these just the words Gary would whip at you like chains? You don't know jack shit, Jean Marie. Open your eyes, Jean. Jesus Christ. You're a lamb about to get slaughtered, honey, and you don't even know it. He said this with a smile, a mean smile, because he'd been drinking again with his new friends who wore camo and smoked cigarettes and didn't shave and drove big Ford or Ram trucks, except for that small lawyer who ran ultramarathons, 100 miles straight, his face always shaved, his cheeks flushed with disciplined blood, and he would have been handsome if not for the hatred in his narrow eyes. You will cross out that first sentence and you will write, I think what you did was so wrong. I think what you did would make your father ashamed of you. That part will hurt you to write. It will hurt you because it will bring you back to your father-in-law, who was always so kind to you, treating you, Jean Marie Doucette, like a special gift his son was lucky to receive. And if he were ever to lose this gift, then he would lose his one chance at happiness. It was something Gary's father never seemed to find, not since before he was 19 anyway, and sent to that part of the world he never wanted to talk about. That orange chemical giving him the 3 cancers that finally killed that sweet man. Your father was a patriot, Gary. You and your friends are just... The buzz and cry of a chainsaw will come from across the lake, and you will look out the kitchen window through the pines to the gray ice covering the water. You will know that one of your neighbors to the south is cutting a hole into that ice for fishing, and this will frighten you. The thought of a square in the ice and that cold black water exposed. Fear will move into you then like a virus, and you will think how unbalanced Gary's new friends are. Their guns and their flags and their survival shelters. You will think how you need to hurry. Up against the legs at the kitchen table is your packed suitcase. Your mother gave it to you when you were going off to culinary school. All those cooking shows on TV when you were in high school, you thought you wanted to be a chef, the one in the kitchen creating nourishing pleasure for others. At the school, you fell in love with soups, with their various stocks and how just about anything that grew out of the ground could go into them. But your teachers were harsh or didn't seem to care at all. And your classmates, it soon became clear, were the kinds of kids in high school that had few friends, which was the case with you too. And soon this journey to a new and glorious you felt like a wrong turn, and then the work got harder, and you didn't really want to be a chef anymore. One weekend, a boy from New Hampshire was visiting his friend Sid on campus. Sid was huge and laughed too hard, and his friend was tall and skinny in a wool sweater, his hair cut short, not for any style, he would tell you later, but for safety at work. Over too many cans of beer and some vodka nips too, the two of you sitting close together on the ratty couch of Sid's dorm room, the Black Eyed Peas singing about rocking their shit, a joint going around. This boy, Gary's eyes held a steady kind of light you'd never seen before. It seemed to come from a deep knowing that what he was doing was what he was born to do. And it was like walking lost through the night woods, and just before the panic came, there opened before you a clear, dry path, the warm windows of a house up ahead. You and your friends are just criminals, you will write. You will remember their many meetings right there in your own small living room, though most of them used to be held online in their various chat rooms until the lawyer James made them all worry about their cyber being compromised, and so they began to meet in each other's houses or apartments. You will recall some of the wives and girlfriends then. Big girls or scrawny ones in their t-shirts with their leader's face scowling from their breasts. Most of these women staying quiet while their angry men went on and on about how they, these white men, had all been wronged, how their leader, who should still be running the free world, had been wronged, how they needed to take their country back now. The chainsaw will go quiet out on the lake. And in that quiet, you will hear your own telephone voice tell the lady in the FBI office what you told her just 1 hour ago. My husband is one of them. Your face will heat with shame, and now you will shake your head and read your own word on the page before you. Criminals. Even Gary? How many nights after those meetings would you lie in bed next to your husband and ask him if he really believed everything that had just been said in their own home? I mean, about Jews, honey? Do you really hate Jews after all they've been through? Don't believe everything you hear, Gene. His back would be to you when for years your back would be curled into his chest, his long arm resting on your naked hip, his heart beating slow and so steady against your ribs. Thank you. It is my immense pleasure and honor to introduce our final reader, Diane Seuss. She is the author of the poetry collections Frank, Sonnets, winner of the Pulitzer Prize and National Book Critics Circle Award, Still Life with Two Dead Peacocks and a Girl, Four-Legged Girl, finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, Wolf Lake, White Gown Blown Open, winner of the 2009 Juniper Prize for Poetry, and It Blows You Hollow. Her work has appeared in Poetry, the Georgia Review, Brevity, Able Muse, Valparaiso Poetry Review, and the Missouri Review, as well as the Best American Poetry of 2014. She was the McLean Distinguished Visiting Professor in the Department of English at Colorado College in 2012, and she has taught at Kalamazoo College since 1988. Diane Seuss.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Andre. I want to thank everyone who is here tonight to listen in on this Super Bowl of poetry, and all those who put their shoulders to the wheel to put this evening together, and 49 years worth of anthologies as well. Thank you, Bill Henderson. When I got my first pushcart, I experienced a feeling of arrival. And so I'm very grateful to you. I'll read two poems to finish us off. This poem is in the new Pushcart anthology, and the second one will be in a previous one, I think the one before. And these poems are both from my newest collection, Modern Poetry. An aria. How do I get my mind back? Yes, my mind. The fascist, that murderer of 500,000, never had my body. My body has been owned, but not by him. I never liked backtracking. Brush Road, Bourne Street. I've walked those roads before, barefoot. There's no going back to Bourne. No mind left behind to recoup. It's like donated clothes you try to buy back from the sucker who's already wearing them. But there's something to be claimed, some comrade to bust out of jail who can't see the way forward, even when you crack the chains. In my pre-tit days, I'd walk to the empty outdoor theater and sit on the playground equipment beneath the screen. Everything in that place was silver, gravel, playground horses, and rocket ships whose paint had chipped away by wind and time. I knew nothing larger than that screen, no God so sublime. Silver white against the whiter clouds, peppered with purple bird shit. When night falls, anything can project itself against a face like that, cartoons or Vixen rated X. When the free show man came to town, he'd hang a sheet between two trees and project cowboy movies against it. Kids sat on the grass eating popcorn from greasy paper bags, watching ads scroll down the screen. Popcorn wasn't free. A free show was never really free. Do you think someone didn't die on that sheet hung between two trees? I once received a letter from the current lover of the love of my life, telling me he'd overdosed and died. She wrote on thin blue paper, etched with flowers, an act of grace I hadn't earned. I'd left him behind, knowing it was just a matter of time. My mind has grown wooden around love, like a tree that has nearly swallowed a garden gate where lovers met at moonrise when the air was thick with Hesperus. A musty, fatal scent, like punks who refuse to bathe. Lovers long dead, gate now opening only to the tree's heartwood. My son's first love was Anne Frank, after he read her diary. He was 8, drawing portraits of her day and night. I must have Anne, he said when I tucked him in, though he knew she was dead, whatever that means. This is the mind, sepia, color of dried blood. Maybe the first love is the best love, the first loss, the worst. If so, mine came early. The rest is repetition, compulsion, iterations until the ink runs dry. Still, remembering wakes my mind a little, or some facsimile of the mind I used to be. All activities of the mind now seem quaint, like dolls with lace faces unearthed from beneath the attic stairway. My feelings, too, smothered like a kingdom of bees so the buzzing doesn't draw attention to their honey. Now, to unmuffle myself, I read Keats' love letters, written in a tubercular fever, then listen to Marquee Moon album by Television, that Tom Verlaine band, so aggressive live it made me start my period, leave a lyric bloodstain on the chair. Then I play Gimme Shelter on repeat to be awash in the supremacy of Mary Clayton's background vocals. Called into the studio in the middle of the night, cold, hair in curlers, pregnant, pushed out her scream song aria 3 times and miscarried a daughter the next day. She blamed it on the song, but not her voice. When she woke after a car accident years later with amputated legs, she asked only about her voice. Mother, may I sing again? May I see again, not a symbol of a flower, but Hesperus tolls again in the wind again. Flower of an hour, a fragrant hour. Its face, skin, smile, its opening again. The curtain of petals closing over its face again. May I take the murdered world in, sing of it again. And my last poem is called Ballad That Ends with Bitch. She was one of those long-nosed ones, merry, full of grace, cream atop the milk. I picked my way through dung piles and bones, animal dung, animals of every ilk. All of us come with a ballad. Hers was set in an Amish puppy mill, born in a mill, then forced to give birth before she'd been a year on this cold earth. She rolled on her back to show me her scar. Playing dead, she showed me her spaying scar. I have one of those, I said, but mine is perpendicular. Little princess, I too have been opened with a crowbar. My tenderness, I couldn't find a way to say yes. I felt splayed, my little scar exposed. It's all against our will, I suppose. I stumbled through brambles to find my way, I guess. A whole pathless hillside covered in sedge. Barn cats arched their backs, neutralizing agents, agents of indifference. Other animals pawed at the gate, looking to get in or out of grace or fate. I walked her using a piece of rope for a leash. She knew nothing of a leash, that false umbilical cord. On that tether, she wandered aimless, trampish, too small for this world, vast as a billboard. I was once too small for this world. Somebody burned my arm with a cigar. They said they didn't know I was there. I believed them. I still have the scar. She was a prototype of tenderness. I wandered that hillside this way and that. I could not find my way to yes. She was a child bride in a plastic creche. As I drove away, her borders dissolved. She dispersed herself across the landscape like mist. Through the fog, I could still see her belly scar, a horizon line, I told myself, divvying up that and this. When I returned to my digs, the house was frozen stiff. A fine skim of hoarfrost on the writing desk. Why call it a writing desk? It's commerce covered. Bills, tact, that, this. At age 10, I turned away from tenderness. I remember the moment, a flipping of a switch. My house is a cold mess, except for that thing in the corner. Poetry, that snarling, flaming bitch. Thank you.
Francesca, can I speak now? Or you are all just so wonderful. I mean, I forgot that I could feel this way about being a human being. It's such powerful, beautiful work. And boy, do we need it in this time. Thank you so much. This is an incredible gift, really. So this is what it's like to be a human again. Bill, look at what you've done in your modesty. You're all just so wonderful, really. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for being here. You can see your comments that are coming in the chat. I'm going to give it just another 60 seconds or so for everyone to express their gratitude. And thank you all for being here tonight. And to our audience, thank you as well. We hope you have a wonderful evening.